My son didn't know he was firing the man who built his empire. He thought I was just a clumsy janitor who ruined his expensive shoes. He even laughed as he told me I was worthless. But what he didn't realize, I wasn't there to clean the floors. I was there to see if he was still human. And he just failed the most expensive test of his life. Arthur Sterling was worth $50 billion, but his son Julian was quickly becoming a monster of greed. To save his company's soul, Arthur decided to go undercover. He traded his three-piece suits for a mop and a bucket. He wanted to give his son one last chance to prove he was a leader. Instead, Julian gave him a pink slip. Welcome back to Prime Tale, where we bring you the most powerful stories of justice, karma, and life lessons. If you believe that respect should be given to everyone, regardless of their job title, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now. You won't want to miss how Arthur handles the big reveal at the end of this story. Let's get into it. The city never slept. From 50 floors above, it looked peaceful, almost innocent. Streams of headlights flowed like rivers of light. Buildings stood tall like silent giants, and somewhere in the distance, a siren cried into the night. Arthur Sterling stood alone in front of the glass wall of his penthouse office, hands behind his back, posture firm. But his eyes betrayed him. They weren't looking at the city. They were looking through it. Past the success. Past the empire. Past everything he had built. On his desk, a single photograph lay face up. A boy no older than 10. Bright eyes. A wide smile. Arms wrapped tightly around a much younger version of Arthur. Julian. Arthur slowly walked back to the desk, picked up the frame, and stared at it like it held answers he had been searching for. You used to look at me like I was your hero, he murmured under his breath. His thumb brushed gently across the glass. What happened to you? Behind him, a large screen played a business interview on mute. The subtitles rolled silently. Julian Sterling, CEO of Sterling Global, discusses aggressive restructuring. Arthur didn't need the sound. He had already heard enough. Too much, in fact. Complaints. Anonymous reports. Quiet resignations. Fear in the voices of senior staff who used to speak with confidence. At first, he dismissed it. Pressure comes with leadership, he had told himself. But pressure doesn't create fear. Power does. Arthur placed the photo back down carefully, like it might break if he wasn't gentle. Then he turned toward the mirror. And for the first time that night, he didn't see a billionaire. He saw a stranger. Maybe I failed you, he said softly. The words lingered in the room longer than he expected. A knock came at the door. Come in. His assistant stepped inside, hesitant. Sir, the board is asking if you'll be attending tomorrow's review. Arthur didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked past her slowly, toward a closet tucked into the corner of the office. I won't be attending, he said calmly. The assistant blinked. Sir. Arthur opened the closet door. Inside, something unexpected. Not suits. Not luxury. But a neatly prepared set of worn-out clothes. A janitor's uniform. The assistant's confusion deepened. Sir, what is that? Arthur picked up the uniform. Ran his fingers over the fabric. Rough. Used. Real. It's the truth, he said quietly. She didn't understand. And he didn't explain. Cancel my meetings for the next few days, Arthur continued. Tell them I'll be unavailable. Unavailable for how long? Arthur paused, then gave a faint, almost dangerous smile. Until I get my answer. That night, Arthur Sterling disappeared. And before dawn, someone else took his place. The transformation was precise, calculated, complete. The expensive haircut was replaced with uneven gray strands. His clean-shaven face now carried rough stubble. His tailored posture softened into something older, slower, almost invisible. Even his hands, once smooth, were dirted, roughened, aged. Arthur stared into the mirror one last time. But this time, he didn't recognize himself. Arthur Sterling built an empire, he muttered. Then his voice dropped slightly. But today, A pause. A shift. He doesn't exist. He picked up a mop, a bucket, and walked out. By 6 a.m., he was inside Sterling Global Headquarters. No one stopped him. No one questioned him. No one cared. The lobby was massive. Polished marble floors stretched endlessly, reflecting the golden lights above like a mirror. Arthur dipped the mop into the bucket and began to clean. Slow, deliberate, observant. Employees started arriving. One by one. Then dozens. Then hundreds. And something became clear almost immediately. No one saw him. A woman rushed past him while on a call, nearly bumping into him. Didn't apologize. Didn't look back. A group of executives walked by, laughing loudly about a deal they closed. One of them stepped directly over the edge of the wet floor Arthur had just cleaned. "Watch it," the man muttered, annoyed. Not even making eye contact. Arthur kept mopping. But inside, he was taking notes. Invisible. The word echoed in his mind. "Is this what my company has become?" He thought. Hours passed. And then, everything changed. It wasn't loud. It wasn't announced. But you could feel it. The energy shifted. Conversations died mid-sentence. Footsteps became sharper, faster, more controlled. Fear entered the building. Arthur didn't need to turn around. He already knew. Julian had arrived. But he turned anyway. Slowly. Carefully. The black SUV outside was still visible through the glass doors. The driver rushed to open the back seat. And then, Julian Sterling stepped out. Sharp suit. Perfect posture. Cold expression. Arthur's chest tightened. That was his son. But something about him felt different. Wrong. Julian walked through the doors without hesitation. Employees greeted him immediately. "Good morning, sir." "Morning, Mr. Sterling." He didn't respond. Not really. Just a slight nod. Barely human. Arthur watched closely. Studying him. Searching for something. Anything. That reminded him of the boy in the photograph. But it wasn't there. Then suddenly, Julian's eyes shifted. And locked onto him. Arthur. The janitor. For a brief second, time slowed. Arthur lowered his gaze slightly, staying in character. Hands steady on the mop. Julian walked toward him. Each step measured. Intentional. Heavy. Arthur felt it. Not fear. But something deeper. Disappointment. Julian stopped right in front of him. Looked down. Not at his face. But at his shoes. Wet. Silence. "Hey." Arthur looked up gently. "Yes, sir." Julian's expression hardened instantly. "You see this?" Arthur followed his gaze. "The floor is still drying, sir." Wrong answer. Julian stepped closer. Close enough to make it uncomfortable. "I didn't ask for an explanation." The air grew heavier. "I asked." A pause. A sharp breath. "Why you're incompetent." Arthur felt it. Not just as a man, but as a father. Still, he stayed in character. "I'm sorry, sir." Julian tilted his head slightly. Studying him. Judging him. Dismissing him. "You're sorry," he repeated. Then a faint, cold smirk appeared. "That doesn't fix my shoes." Arthur said nothing. Around them, people were watching. Pretending not to. But listening. Carefully. Julian straightened his jacket slowly. "Let me make something very clear to you." His voice dropped. Lower. Sharper. "People like you." A pause. "Are replaceable." Arthur's grip tightened on the mop. Just slightly. "If I see you out of line again." Julian leaned in just enough. "You're gone." Silence. Arthur nodded slowly. "Yes, sir." Julian stared at him for one more second. Then turned. And walked away. Like nothing happened. But everything had changed. Arthur stood there. Still. Quiet. The mop remained in his hands. But his mind was somewhere else. That wasn't leadership, he thought. A long pause. That was cruelty. And for the first time since the test began, Arthur felt something dangerous rising inside him. Not anger, but certainty. The test had just begun. But deep down, he already feared the answer. Morning settled fully over Sterling Global, but the tension from Julian's arrival didn't fade. It spread, like a silent infection. Arthur continued mopping the lobby floor, his movements slow and deliberate, but his mind was anything but calm. Every word from Julian replayed in his head. People like you are replaceable. Arthur had heard ruthless business language before. He had used it himself years ago. But this wasn't strategy. This was something else. This was ego. He glanced up subtly. Across the lobby, employees moved differently now. More rigid. More cautious. More afraid. A young man adjusted his tie 3 times before stepping into the elevator. A receptionist straightened her posture the second Julian's reflection appeared on a glass panel upstairs. No one relaxed. No one laughed anymore. Arthur leaned slightly on the mop. Observing. Calculating. This isn't a company, he thought. It's a controlled environment. Then something caught his attention. Near the reception desk, a young woman stood holding a stack of files. Early 20s. Nervous. New. Her badge still looked untouched. In turn, she kept glancing at the elevator. Waiting. Preparing. Practicing something silently under her breath. Arthur watched her closely. He had seen this before. First-day energy. Hope mixed with fear. "Excuse me," she said softly, stepping toward him. Arthur looked up. "Yes. Do you know, where Mr. Sterling's office is?" Her voice trembled slightly. Arthur studied her for a moment, then gave a small nod. "Top floor. Executive wing." She swallowed. "Thank you." She turned to leave, then stopped. Looked back at him. "Does he talk to people like us?" Arthur paused. The question hit deeper than she realized. He chose his words carefully. "That depends." A slight breath. "On the kind of man he is." She forced a small smile, but it didn't hide her fear. "Right." She walked toward the elevator, and Arthur watched her go. Something in his chest tightened again. Minutes later, the elevator doors opened on the executive floor. Arthur wasn't supposed to be there. But today, rules didn't apply. He pushed his cart slowly down the hallway, keeping his head low. Listening. Watching. Voices echoed from a nearby office. Julian's voice. Sharp. Impatient. "I don't care what legal says, push it through." A pause. "If they can't handle pressure, they shouldn't be here." Arthur's jaw tightened slightly. Then, a knock. The intern. "Come in," Julian said. Arthur moved just close enough to hear. Not seen. Not noticed. The door opened. And the moment she stepped inside, the air changed. "Sir, good morning," she said carefully. "I'm here with the reports you requested." Late. The word cut through her sentence like a blade. She froze. I was told 9 o'clock. It's 9:02. Silence. Arthur closed his eyes briefly. This is how it starts, he thought. "I'm sorry, sir. It won't happen again." Julian didn't respond immediately. That silence. It was intentional. Power play. Finally, he stood up. Walked slowly around his desk. Arthur could hear every step. Measured. Dominant. "You're new." "Yes, sir." Julian stopped in front of her. And already making mistakes. Her hands tightened around the files. "I'll improve, sir." Julian tilted his head slightly, studying her like she was a problem to solve. Or, a pause. "You'll be replaced." Arthur's grip tightened on the mop again. The same words. Different victim. The intern swallowed hard. "I understand, sir." "Do you?" Julian's voice dropped. Lower. Colder. Because understanding isn't saying yes. A step closer. It's proving you belong here. Arthur could hear her breathing now. Shallow. Uneven. Put the files down. She stepped forward carefully, placed them on the desk. And that's when it happened. A single paper slipped, fell, then another. Within seconds, the entire stack scattered across the floor. Silence. Heavy. Arthur's eyes opened slowly. No, he whispered under his breath. The intern dropped to her knees immediately. I'm so sorry, I'll fix it. Julian didn't move. Didn't help. Didn't even blink. He just watched. You dropped it. Her hands trembled as she gathered the papers. Yes, sir, I'm sorry. Stop saying sorry. She froze. Sorry doesn't fix incompetence. Arthur felt something shift inside him. This wasn't pressure. This was humiliation. The girl's hands moved faster now. Panicked. Desperate. Julian turned slightly, glanced toward the door, and noticed something. Arthur. Standing there. Watching. Their eyes met. For just a second. And Julian frowned. You again. Arthur lowered his head slightly. Staying in character. I told you to stay out of my sight. Arthur nodded. I was just cleaning the hallway, sir. Julian stepped closer. Annoyance clear on his face. Then clean quietly. Arthur said nothing. Behind him, the intern was still struggling to gather the papers. One slipped again. Julian sighed. Loud. Deliberate. Unbelievable. He turned back to her. Stand up. She hesitated. Then obeyed. Julian looked at the scattered papers. Then back at her. You had one job. Her eyes filled with tears. But she held them back. I'll redo everything, sir. Julian stared at her for a long second. Then, he walked past her. Cold. Dismissive. Don't bother. She blinked. Confused. You're done here. The words didn't register immediately. Sir. Julian didn't stop walking. Collect your things. A pause. And don't come back. Silence. Arthur felt it hit. Not just her, but the entire floor. The intern stood frozen. Broken. I understand. But her voice cracked. Julian didn't even look back. The door closed behind him. And just like that, she was nothing. Arthur stood there, still, watching her slowly sink back to her knees. Not to pick up papers, but because she couldn't stand anymore. Tears fell now. Quiet. Unstoppable. Arthur took a step forward, then stopped. His chest tightened. Harder than before. This is my company, he thought. And this is what it's become. He looked down at his hands. Rough. Dirty. Disguised. Invisible. Then back at the broken girl on the floor. And something inside him locked into place. This wasn't a test anymore. This was judgment. And Julian had just failed again. The building looked the same. Glass walls. Polished floors. Perfect structure. But something inside it had changed. You couldn't see it. But you could feel it. Fear. It moved quietly between departments, sat in meetings, stood behind employees as they worked, and whispered one message over and over again. Don't make a mistake. Arthur felt it everywhere. As he pushed his cleaning cart through the corridors, no one made eye contact anymore. No one smiled. Even conversations had changed. Short. Careful. Controlled. In the marketing department, 2 employees spoke in hushed tones. He fired her. Just like that? Yeah. First week. That's insane. Lower your voice. Arthur slowed his steps. Listening. He didn't even hesitate. That's how he is now. Now. A pause. He wasn't always like this. Arthur's chest tightened slightly. He moved on. But their words followed him. He wasn't always like this. That sentence stayed in his mind longer than it should have. Because it meant something. It meant this wasn't just who Julian was. It was who he had become. And that meant something had shaped him. Or broken him. Arthur turned into another hallway. Executive wing again. He wasn't supposed to be there. But no one stopped him. Because no one noticed him. Invisible. He passed by a glass conference room. Inside, a meeting was happening. Senior staff. Tense faces. At the head of the table. Julian. Arthur stopped just outside. Quiet. Still. Listening. "We're cutting another 15%, Julian said flatly. A man across the table hesitated. "That's the third round this quarter." And the room went silent. Arthur watched the man shift uncomfortably. "Morale is already low," he continued carefully. "If we keep pushing like this, we risk losing weak people." Julian interrupted. Silence. Julian leaned back in his chair. Completely unfazed. "Good." Arthur's jaw tightened. "I don't build teams based on comfort," Julian continued. "I build them based on performance." A woman across the table spoke up. Softly. Carefully. "There's a difference between pressure and fear." Julian's eyes shifted to her instantly. Sharp. Dangerous. "Explain." The room froze. She swallowed. But she didn't back down. "Pressure motivates," she said. "Fear paralyzes." Arthur watched closely. For a moment. Just a moment. He thought. Maybe. Julian smiled. But it wasn't a good sign. Then they should learn to move while afraid. Silence. No one spoke again. Meeting over. Just like that. Arthur stepped back as the doors opened. Employees walked out quickly. Avoiding eye contact. Avoiding everything. The woman who spoke earlier passed by him. Her expression was calm. But her hands were shaking. Arthur watched her go. Then turned his attention back to Julian. Still inside. Alone now. For a second. Julian's shoulders dropped. Just slightly. A crack. Arthur noticed it immediately. Interesting, he thought. But it was gone just as fast. Julian straightened up. Cold again. Untouchable again. Mask back on. Arthur stepped away. Something was becoming clearer now. Julian wasn't just cruel. He was controlled. Calculated. And completely disconnected. But the real question was, why? Arthur didn't have time to answer that. Because the next moment, the tension exploded. Back in the main hallway. A loud crash echoed. Everyone turned. A delivery cart had tipped over. Boxes scattered across the floor. And standing in the middle of it, a middle-aged employee. Frozen. Arthur recognized him. Daniel. One of the quietest workers in the building. Always early. Always respectful. Always invisible. Just like him. "Sir, I'm sorry, I didn't see the..." Too late. Julian had already arrived. "What is this?" His voice cut through the hallway instantly. Daniel tried to speak. "I'll clean it up." "Of course you will," Julian said. "But that's not the point." Employees gathered at a distance. Watching. Silent. Arthur stepped closer. Not too close. But enough. "This is a main corridor," Julian continued. "Do you understand what that means?" Daniel nodded quickly. "Yes, sir. It means visibility." A step closer. "It means standards." Another step. "And right now." A pause. "You're failing both." Daniel's hands trembled. "I'll fix it immediately." Julian kicked one of the boxes lightly. It slid across the floor. "You already made the mistake." Arthur felt it again. That rising pressure. That familiar anger. Not loud. But heavy. Daniel bent down quickly, trying to gather everything. No one helped. No one moved. Arthur looked around. Dozens of employees. Watching. Waiting. Doing nothing. Fear had frozen them. Completely. Arthur stepped forward. Just one step. And stopped. His mind raced. If I interfere now, the test ends. But if I don't? He looked at Daniel. Struggling. Alone. And the answer became clear. This wasn't just about Julian anymore. This was about everyone. The entire company had changed. And not one person had the courage to stand up. Arthur slowly stepped back again. Watching. Learning. Locking it in. Julian finally turned away. Dismissed it. Like it meant nothing. Clean it up, he said coldly. And walked off. Just like before. Daniel stayed on the floor, picking up the pieces. Alone. Arthur approached him slowly, kneeling beside him. For the first time, someone helped. Daniel glanced at him. Surprised. Thank you. Arthur nodded slightly. But his eyes weren't on the boxes. They were focused ahead, where Julian had just walked. And in that moment, the decision was made. Clear. Final. This ends tomorrow. Arthur stood up slowly. The mop, the uniform, the disguise, all still in place. But inside, the chairman had returned, and Julian had no idea what was coming. The next morning felt different. Not quieter. Not louder. Just a heavier. Like the building itself knew something was about to happen. Arthur arrived earlier than usual. 5:30 a.m. Before the first employee. Before the lights fully came on. Before the illusion of perfection began. The lobby stood empty. Cold. Still. Arthur pushed his cart slowly across the marble floor, the wheels echoing softly in the silence. But today, he wasn't just cleaning. He was preparing. Every movement had purpose now. Every second mattered. Because today, he would stop observing and start testing. Arthur reached the executive elevator. Paused. Looked at his reflection in the metal doors. The janitor stared back. Tired. Invisible. Powerless. Arthur leaned slightly closer. His voice barely above a whisper. One more time. The elevator doors opened. He stepped inside. And ascended. The executive floor was empty when he arrived. Perfect. Arthur walked down the long hallway slowly, taking in every detail. The glass walls. The polished surfaces. The silence. This was where power lived. And today, it would be challenged. He stopped near the center corridor, right where Julian usually walked. Timing. Position. Execution. Arthur placed the cleaning bucket carefully. Poured just enough water onto the floor. Not too much. Not obvious. Just enough. Then he waited. Minutes passed. Employees began arriving. Executives. Assistants. Managers. The hallway slowly came alive. Arthur kept his head down. Mopping. Watching. And then, right on schedule, the elevator doors opened. Julian stepped out. Sharp. Precise. Unbothered. But Arthur noticed something new. No greetings today. No conversations. Just silence. The entire floor felt him. Julian walked forward, reviewing something on his tablet. Focused. Distracted. Perfect. Arthur adjusted his grip on the mop slightly. This was it. Every step Julian took brought him closer. 5 steps away. 3. 2. Impact. The collision was small. Controlled. But effective. The bucket tilted. Water spilled. A thin stream. Right across Julian's briefcase. Time froze. The sound of the bucket settling echoed louder than it should have. Arthur stepped back immediately. I'm sorry, sir. Julian didn't move. Didn't blink. Slowly, he looked down. At the water. At the briefcase. At the damage. Then, he looked up. And what Arthur saw in his son's eyes was not frustration. It was rage. Pure. Uncontrolled. Explosive. Are you? A pause. Serious right now? Arthur stayed calm. It was an accident, sir. An accident. The shout echoed through the entire floor. Doors opened. Heads turned. Footsteps stopped. Every eye locked onto them. Arthur could feel it. This was no longer private. This was public. Exactly what he wanted. Julian stepped forward. Fast. Aggressive. Do you have any idea what you just did? Arthur held his ground. It's just water. Wrong move. Julian snapped. Just water. His voice cracked with anger. This is a prototype contract. Do you understand what that means? Arthur said nothing. Julian laughed. But there was no humor in it. Of course you don't. A step closer. You clean floors. Another step. You don't understand value. Arthur's eyes didn't move. But inside, everything tightened. Julian raised the briefcase slightly. A deal like this. A pause. Is worth more than you'll ever make in your entire life. The words hit hard. And the employees felt it. You could see it in their faces. This wasn't discipline anymore. This was destruction. Arthur spoke again. Quiet. Controlled. I can dry it, sir. Julian stared at him. Like he couldn't believe what he just heard. Then, he smiled. Dangerous. No. A pause. You've done enough. He turned sharply. Security. The word echoed instantly. Footsteps approached. Fast. 2 guards appeared within seconds. Julian pointed at Arthur. Get him out of my building. Arthur didn't move. The guards hesitated slightly. Something felt off. But Julian didn't give them time to think. Now. Cold. Final. Arthur finally spoke. Sir, it was an accident. You're fired. Silence. Heavy. Crushing. Arthur nodded slowly. No resistance. No argument. But Julian wasn't finished. And don't even think about asking for your final check. A step closer. I should sue you for this. Arthur looked at him. Really looked at him. Not as a janitor. But as a father. And what he saw confirmed everything. This wasn't pressure. This wasn't leadership. This was emptiness. Arthur gave a small nod. Understood, sir. The guards placed a hand on his arm and began to escort him out. As they walked through the hallway, something unexpected happened. People watched. But this time, they didn't look afraid. They looked uncomfortable. Ashamed. Because deep down, they knew. This was wrong. Arthur walked slowly. Calm. Silent. But inside, something had already shifted. The test was over. And the result? Clear. Julian had failed. Completely. As the elevator doors closed, Arthur lifted his head slightly. And for the first time since entering the building, there was no disguise in his eyes. Only certainty. Tomorrow, he thought. A pause. You face me. The doors shut. And just like that, the janitor disappeared. But the storm was just beginning. The elevator ride down was silent. Not peaceful. Not calm. Heavy. Arthur stood between the 2 security guards, his hands relaxed at his sides, his posture still slightly bent, still playing the role. But inside, everything had already changed. The reflection in the elevator doors showed 3 men. 2 in uniform. 1 in disguise. But only one of them truly understood what was about to happen. The guard on the right shifted slightly. Uncomfortable. Sir, he muttered under his breath. Then stopped himself. Arthur noticed. Even now, there was hesitation. Recognition. Not of who he was, but of what this felt like. Wrong. Arthur didn't respond. He didn't need to. The elevator dinged. Lobby. The doors opened slowly. And the moment they did, everything stopped. The entire lobby turned. Receptionists. Assistants. Junior staff. Executives passing through. All eyes locked onto the scene. The janitor being escorted out. Arthur stepped forward calmly. No resistance. no struggle. But every step echoed louder than usual. Not because of the sound, but because of what it meant. Humiliation. Public. Final. The same way Julian had done it to others. Arthur walked past the reception desk. The same one where he stood invisible just yesterday. Now, everyone saw him. But not really. Because they still didn't know who he was. A young employee whispered to another. Did he really get fired for that? I heard it was just water. Shua, don't say anything. Arthur heard everything. And with each whisper, the picture became clearer. This wasn't an isolated incident. This was culture. Built, maintained, protected, by fear. The glass doors opened. Sunlight hit his face. And just like that, he was outside. The guards released him. For a brief second, no one moved. Then one of the guards spoke quietly. I'm sorry. Arthur looked at him. Studied him. You were just doing your job, he said calmly. But the guard shook his head slightly. Still. Arthur gave a small nod. Because he understood. Then the doors closed behind him. And the building stood tall once again. Untouched. Unchallenged. At least. That's what it looked like. Arthur turned slowly. Facing the massive glass tower. His name was still on it. Sterling Global. For years it meant something. Now, it meant something else. His phone buzzed. Arthur reached into his pocket. Pulled it out. A message. Company-wide. From Julian Sterling. Arthur opened it. Effective immediately, the janitor known as Artie is banned from all Sterling properties. A pause. Then the next line. Efficiency over empathy. That is the new Sterling standard. Arthur stared at the screen. Read it again. Slower. Efficiency over empathy. The words felt heavier the second time. Not because they were powerful, but because they were empty. Arthur let out a quiet breath. Then, something unexpected happened. He smiled. Not warmly. Not proudly. But knowingly. Efficiency, he repeated softly. He looked back up at the building. Let's test that. He turned. And began to walk away. No rush. No hesitation. Just certainty. Behind him. Inside the building. Everything continued as normal. Or at least, that's what Julian believed. Back on the executive floor, Julian stood in his office, staring out at the city. His reflection stared back at him. Sharp. Controlled. Powerful. He adjusted his cufflinks slowly. The incident from earlier? Already gone. Irrelevant. To him. It was nothing. A problem handled. A mistake removed. His assistant knocked. Come in. She stepped inside carefully. Sir, the board meeting is scheduled for tomorrow morning. Julian nodded. Good. A pause. They've been asking about the restructuring. Julian smirked slightly. They'll get answers. His tone was calm. Confident. Untouchable. Prepare the presentation, he added. I want everything ready. Yes, sir. She turned to leave. Then hesitated. Sir. Julian didn't look at her. What is it? Some of the board members seem concerned about recent decisions. Silence. Julian slowly turned. Concerned. The word sounded almost foreign coming from him. Yes, sir. There have been complaints. Julian stared at her. Long enough to make her uncomfortable. Then, he smiled. Cold. Let them be concerned. A step closer. They'll understand soon enough. She nodded quickly. Of course, sir. And left. The door closed. Julian turned back to the window. The city stretched endlessly before him. And in that moment, he truly believed it. That he was in control. That nothing could touch him. That every decision he made was right. Final. Absolute. He had no idea that less than 24 hours from now, Everything would be taken from him. Not by the market. Not by competitors. But by the one man he thought he had already gotten rid of. Arthur Sterling. The founder. The father. The man he had just fired. Morning came quietly. Too quietly. Sterling Global stood tall as always, its glass exterior reflecting the rising sun like nothing had changed. But inside, something had shifted. Not visibly. Not obviously. But enough for those paying attention to feel it. Employees moved with the same caution as before. But today, there was something else mixed in. Anticipation. Whispers had spread overnight. Not loud enough to be traced, but strong enough to be felt. Did you hear about the janitor? Yeah, something felt off. They said security didn't even question it. Lower your voice. Arthur wasn't there. At least, not the version they had seen. The janitor was gone. But something told them that story wasn't finished. Upstairs, on the executive floor, everything was being prepared. The boardroom doors stood open. Inside, a long polished table stretched across the room, surrounded by high-backed chairs. Power lived in that room. Decisions. Control. Futures. And today, a reckoning. Board members began arriving one by one. Older men. Sharp women. Veterans of business. They didn't smile. They didn't chat much. Because even they felt it. Something wasn't normal. One of them leaned toward another. Julian called this meeting himself? A slight nod. That's unusual. Another voice joined in quietly. He's been making aggressive moves lately. Too aggressive. Silence. No one said it out loud. But they were all thinking the same thing. Is he losing control? At exactly 9 a.m., the doors opened. Julian Sterling walked in. Confident. Sharp. Untouched. He carried himself like nothing in the world could challenge him. Because in his mind, nothing could. Good morning, he said calmly. A few nods. No warmth. Julian took his seat. At the head of the table. The chairman's seat. Arthur's seat. But today, Arthur wasn't there. Or so he thought. Julian placed his tablet on the table. Looked around the room. I'll keep this brief, he began. His voice was steady. Controlled. We're entering a new phase of growth. A slide appeared on the screen behind him. Numbers. Charts. Expansion plans. Efficiency is our priority, Julian continued. A board member leaned forward slightly. At what cost? Julian didn't hesitate. Any cost necessary. Silence. Another member spoke. We've received reports about internal issues. Julian's expression didn't change. Define issues. A pause. Employee terminations. Sudden restructuring. Low morale. Julian leaned back slightly. Those aren't issues. A beat. They're corrections. The room went still. Another board member folded his hands. And the janitor? That question landed differently. Julian's eyes shifted slightly. What about him? He was removed rather aggressively. Julian exhaled quietly. He caused damage to company property. And that justified a public dismissal? Julian's tone hardened slightly. It justified efficiency. Silence again. Heavy. Uncomfortable. But Julian didn't feel it. Or chose not to. He stood up slowly. Let me make something clear. His voice dropped. This company doesn't operate on emotions. A step forward. It operates on results. Another step. And anyone who can't keep up. A pause. Is replaced. The words echoed. Final. Absolute. And then, something unexpected happened. A voice. From behind him. Calm. Deep. Is that what you believe? The room froze. Julian stopped mid-step. Slowly. He turned. Confusion flickered across his face for the first time. Because that voice. didn't belong there. At the far end of the table, in the chairman's seat, sat a man, back turned, still, silent. Julian frowned. "Who is that?" No one answered, because no one needed to. The tension in the room had already changed. Completely. Julian's voice sharpened.